The situation that the topic that we're going to talk about today is about facial hair, face fit testing, and respiratory protective equipment. Not so much from a health and safety point of view, but from a HR point of view and the implications. This is one of those topical matters that crosses over such a lot with HR and health and safety. Many workers who have been choosing to grow stubble and beards as part of their look of choice and because of religious and belief for time immemorial. Some people also choose to wear a beard to cover facial scarring or other health reasons, or some feel more inclusive when they're transgender. So a lot of different scenarios and situations where people have grown and maintain facial hair, a beard, stubble, moustaches. When confronted with this in the workplace for health and safety reasons, generally workers who are asked to shave their beards because a need to protect them will do so. But there will be times where some workers will refuse to shave their beards. And what options does an employer have in the situations, and what is the overarching priority of the employer to protect that person's health and well-being, as well as meeting their human rights? The health and safety of the worker or the worker's preferences. What is the definitive here, and what is that really difficult situation to be dealt with? This is a particular issue for construction and manufacturing sectors where often dust is created that cannot be removed or suppressed adequately. Respiratory protective equipment, known as RPE, usually has in a specified mask or face mask, will then be required. And in such circumstances, it's the employer's duty to identify the need through risk assessment and provide suitable RPE. And it's the worker's duty to use it as instructed. If there is a legal protected reason, though, for facial hair, such as religious requirements, then will be a requirement to make will there be a requirement to make them shave to be deemed a reasonable or proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim. The legitimate aim being to protect the health and safety of that employee or the worker at work. Or should the employer be looking at alternatives such as more expensive hoods or an alternative role? In the case of facial hair being a personal choice, if the worker refuses to be clean shaven, is it incumbent for the employer to purchase more expensive RPE, such as a hood, costing hundreds of pounds more and potentially meaning that it spends tens of thousands if others take the same stance and personal choices? We're going to explore all of this in the next 10 or 15 minutes. Or can the employer, having taken or considered all other reasonable steps, initiate disciplinary procedures and potentially dismiss an employee if they refuse to comply with the reasonable request of the employer to fail to follow health and safety requirements? Possibly. We explore these issues in this Toolbox talk, attempting to reconcile the health and safety requirements between practical needs of the business and its employees and balance these somewhat competing issues with the employer's duties and risks under employment law. Any questions so far? Health and safety in terms of RPE, when hazardous gases, airborne particles, or other substances can potentially cause harm to workers, employers responsible for their health and safety will need to take reasonable steps to protect them. Where RPE is used and defined as a suitable mechanism to protect that worker's health, it must be made available and to provide adequate protection for individual wearers. RPE can't protect the wearer if it leaks, and a major cause of leaks is poor fitting. A tight fitting face piece needs to fit the wearer's face to be effective. As people come in at all sorts of shapes and sizes, it is unlikely that one particular type or size of RPE face piece will fit everyone. Fit testing will ensure that the equipment selected is suitable for the wearer. An RPE fit testing should be conducted by a competent person. You should take steps to ensure that people who carry out the fit test is appropriately trained, qualified and experienced, and is provided with appropriate information to undertake each particular task. This will identify what kind of mask, RPE mask, is suitable for each worker for the work that they are about to undertake. Not that they've already undertaken or are undertaking, but being planned and prepared and ready for what they are about to undertake. What employers need to know is that the best time to do face fit testing is at the initial selection stage, when individual users can be given a choice of adequate models of RPE. As I said, not once the work is being started. You should ensure that the make, model, type and size of the face piece that they wore and wear when they had their successful fit test is made available for their use. If an employee wears more than one type of tight-fitting face piece, then each type of face piece should be fit tested. Fit tested, as just to recap, is to make sure that it has a suitable solid seal around the person's face to ensure no gases or particles can get into that face piece once it's been in operation. Many masks rely upon a good seal against the face so that when you breathe it in, it is drawn it is drawn into the filter material where the air is cleaned. If there are any gaps around the edges of the mask, dirty air will pass through these gaps and into the worker's lungs. It is therefore very important that you put your mask on correctly and check for a good fit every time. And this is where we get onto facial hair. Facial hair such as stubble, moustaches, sideburns, long sideburns and beards are all included, making it impossible to get a good seal of the mask on the face. If the worker is clean shaven when wearing tight fitting mask, i.e. those which rely upon a good seal to the face, this will help prevent leakage of contaminated air around the edges of the masks and into the worker's lungs. The worker will therefore be breathing in clean air, which will help them stay healthy. If there are good reasons, though, for having a beard, for example, religious reasons, and we're going to come on to some scenarios in a second, alternative forms of RPE that do not rely upon a tight fit to the face are available. They are expensive though, and an employer must be considerate whether buying that expensive RPE that is not a face fit, a close face fit, is a proportionate way of achieving the objective to keep the worker safe and healthy. If that can't be met, then it may be that you've got to think about alternative employment for that worker during the course of those dirty activities. We'll come on to some scenarios and options. As well as their duty to health and safety of the employee, the employer also has a requirement to treat its workers reasonably, fairly, and not in a discriminatory manner. What will be classed as discriminatory will depend on the treatment of the worker and whether it relates to a protected characteristic under the Equality Act 2010. The choice to have a beard or facial hair for fashion reasons is not a protected reason under the Equality Act. But each case should be assessed on its own merits, and a reasonable and fair approach should always be taken. Where the rights of the employee should be balanced with the responsibility of the employer. Let's look at a couple of scenarios. A 30-year-old male worker refuses to be clean shaven and cites personal choice. He claims his personal choice is as important as another person's religion, and by either not purchasing the more expensive hood or by taking other action against him, he is then being discriminated against or treated unfairly. He comes to work wearing a standard mask which has not been face fitted. So, what are the employer's options in this situation? They can reasonably ask him to have a face fit test and use the required mask, so their duty of care towards them as a health and safety reason takes precedent. There is no obligation on the employer to buy the more expensive hood in this situation, although they could agree to share the costs, or the employee could pay for their own hood if they refuse to shave. The employer should speak to him about this and try to get them agree. If he continues to disagree, he can be suspended if alternative work is not available and potentially put through a disciplinary procedure and given a warning initially to see if it improves the situation. If it doesn't and he continues to refuse, he could at some point be dismissed for failing to follow reasonable management instructions and a serious breach of health and safety rules. Let's look at a different scenario. A Sikh man and other religions such as Islam and or another protected belief decides that to grow their beard for religious reasons and argues that his beard is a manifestation of his belief and faith. He agrees to have a hood instead, and the employer should discuss his reasonable and what is reasonable and accommodate his request. As for a Sikh man, the beard can be a manifestation of their religious belief. It is reasonable for the employer to purchase the hood for the employee, and if the employee disagrees and does not consent to wearing the hood, the employer should look at alternative roles again that he could do. If there aren't any, there may be a situation where even though the beard is a manifestation of the faith and protected by equality laws, following a fair procedure and potential dismissing may be a proportionate means of achieving that legitimate aim. The aim to keep that person safe with the work equipment, although that could be justified in certain circumstances where the cost is prohibitive for the employer. Another option there may be to stand that person down if work is not available, lay them off, but your contract should have that available there as a provision if there is no suitable alternative work available. Let's look at another situation. A man with facial scarring has stubble or a beard to cover up the scarring. He refuses to shave and because of the heat generated in the hood, claims that the hood makes him feel panicky and may have been an incident that has caused that scarring. The employer should discuss alternatives, including whether there is an alternative role for the employee. There is no duty to create a role for the employee. However, a reasonable assessment of roles such as moving others should be considered. If alternatives cannot be found, the employee again could be stood down or ultimately dismissed for failing to follow a fair procedure. And again, there is a proportionate means of achieving this legitimate aim of keeping staff safe from harm in the workplace. The final scenario we're going to look at, and these are the kind of cases that we're dealing with all the time. A transgender man has stubble and refuses to shave as it enables him to feel good and look masculine. The employer should speak to them and discuss wearing a hood again to protect their health and safety. If they refuse because they do not want to stand out and bring their chosen gender to the fore, the employer should look at alternative ways to which the individual may be accommodated in a different role. If one is reasonably available, that is. But if the options for no proportionate means or there aren't other opportunities to re-engage that employee elsewhere, then we could be considering a layoff or potential dismissal because of the aforementioned reasons, unable to provide work in a safe manner, following reasonable instructions, and breach of health and safety rules. These scenarios demonstrate just some of the varied situations that employers face where their workforce cannot or will not meet their safe legal obligations. At THSP, or HR and health and safety teams are helping customers overcome all their face-fit requirements and issues that they confront. Hope that has cast some light on a very topical but difficult situation that is facing employers in construction, manufacturing industries typically today. Do we have any questions? If there are any questions, please be minded that you need to engage your microphone before talking, because it's automatically switched off. Or do feel free to put anything into the chat or the Q&A that's at the top of the page. If there are no questions, then I'm going to close this Toolbox talk on the HR implications of face fit testing, beards, facial hair in the employment context.